Great. All right. So we are here live. Welcome to anyone and everyone who is joining us this afternoon, or if you're watching this recorded broadcast, we appreciate you tuning in. We are going to have a conversation today about Iowa's sex abuse laws and the changes and the updates we need to make in order to modernize those. And so I'm Amber Gustafson. For those of you who know who I am a mom from Ankeny. In 2018, I ran for Iowa Senate. And since that time, I've been using my platform to talk about issues that are really important to me. Childhood sexual abuse is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart. As I've disclosed to folks before, I too am a survivor of childhood abuse. And so helping folks find justice is really, really important to me. And obviously it's important to you as well, who are tuning in to watch this broadcast and taking some time out of your day to learn a little bit about this. So I'm here with some really incredible, powerful, motivated, compassionate women who are working on this issue. And so we're going to go around first and have everyone introduce themselves. And we'll start with Janet Petersen.
Well, Amber, thanks so much for having the conversation today. And I'm really glad to be here. And also thank you for sharing that you are personally impacted by this issue, as so many Iowans and Americans are. It's a public health tragedy that we have got to get a better handle on. And so I'm grateful to be here and be part of the conversation. My district is District 18 until the map changes with redistricting, but I represent the northwest side of Des Moines, and I've served I'm serving my third term in the Iowa Senate right now.
Wonderful. Marci, let's have you go next.
Sure. So thanks, Amber, for having me. And also thanks for having this conversation. It's just so important as we focus on access to justice for the victims. I'm a CEO and founder of ChildUSA, and I'm a professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
Welcome. So glad you're here. Kathryn.
Hi there. And again, thank you for having us. It's exciting to be here, and it's exciting to see Janet again and the great leadership that she has. My name is Kathryn Robb, and I'm the Executive Director of ChildUSAdvocacy, which is a sister organization of ChildUSA. Marci Hamilton is a rock star and one of my great friends, and I am also a survivor of child sexual abuse.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you all were able to take time out today and join us for this conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. And Janet, tell us a little bit about how this came on your radar, that Iowa's laws were behind the times, not serving the needs of survivors of childhood sexual abuse, and really what motivated you to get into this fight.
Yeah, well, I got involved with this when I had a gentleman come to reach out to me that was a constituent of mine, and he had been abused in a youth group as an adolescent, a group that involved the abuse of 6 other boys and himself. And he was the first person that opened my eyes to the fact that he was unable to seek justice because of Iowa's horrible Statute of Limitations laws that really make this a perfect crime for abusers. Because by the time survivors are able to articulate what they've been through or come forward, the clock has already run out on them. And so I've been working since that conversation to try and bring justice or give survivors access to justice. And so far, we're not there yet. We've made small steps, but we've still got a long ways to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was reading an article last night that was talking about, really the epidemic within the epidemic, which is that, boys and young men particularly are underserved by the existing laws that are on the books, or just even the cultural ethos around sex and sexuality and abuse and all of those types of things. And it's he was very brave to come forward and share that story with you. And thank you so much for taking up his cause and the cause of so many. So Marci, tell us a little bit about what's going on with sexual abuse laws in Iowa. Where do they fall short, and how could they be better?
Well, thanks to Senator Petersen, Iowa is no longer among the worst of the worst. It was one of those states that both the criminal statute of limitations and the civil statute of limitations, and by the way, for the audience, a statute of limitations is just the deadline for filing. It's just the time you have to get to court. And so until this year, the state of Iowa was not providing justice to child sex abuse victims past age 19 in a lot of circumstances. And what that meant is that we know under the science that the average age to come forward is age 52. About a third of victims never come forward, a third come forward during childhood in some way, and then a third come forward during adulthood, and age 52 is the average. So the state of Iowa was shutting down these cases and this information so early. Now, Senator Petersen this year really did move the ball forward. The state has finally eliminated the criminal statute of limitations, and that's extraordinary. But for the vast majority of victims, they're still out of luck.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So explain to me a little bit about what the difference is between the criminal statute of limitations and the civil statute of limitations, and why that matters.
So, in 2003, the state of California tried to do this, a banishing act. They tried to say no statute of limitations for a year for both criminal and civil child sex abuse. So you could prosecute and you could sue for damages. The criminal statute of limitations determines when you get to go to court to press charges and put someone in jail. The civil statute of limitations is what gives you the power to sue in order for the person or the institution to pay to make up for all the damage that's been done to you. Unfortunately, California, their statute of limitations on the criminal side went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. And in Stogner v. United States, I'm sorry to say that the state of California was wrong. You can't erase a criminal statute of limitations. Mm-hmm. So what that means is that what the state of Iowa has just done to eliminate the statute of limitations on the criminal side it's a wonderful thing for everyone under 19 and everyone in the future. Mm-hmm. So those kids being sexually abused today, tragically, they are not going to have to worry about getting to press charges fast enough. Mm-hmm. But the only thing you can do for the victims who are shut out, which is now 99.9% of the state of Iowa, is to revive the civil statute of limitations, and that has not yet been done.
Mm-hmm. I just want to take a quick moment to let those who are watching know that if you have a question or a comment or anything that you would like to share, please feel free to drop it in there. We can see your comments. If you have a question, we can read it on out loud and perhaps get an answer for it. So I happened to notice today, and I didn't have a chance to read the full article, but of course, obviously the Olympics are a big conversation topic right now, and Simone Biles and everything that's going on with her choice, whether she wants to compete or not, and all of those sorts of things. But I happened to see an article that popped up to say that Larry Nassar is behind in his payments to the victims. Can you just very briefly kind of give some context on what that is and how that plays in with the civil statute of limitations and that sort of thing?
So Nassar was both sued and prosecuted, and he has thousands of dollars apparently in his jailhouse account. And instead of making sure that that money went to the victims who'd been able to get compensation, the authorities have been letting him keep it for, whatever he wanted to buy in the prison. So it's just another story of the way our culture just looks away, treats the victims as just collateral damage. And so, it's a tiny issue. because frankly, the harm that he did to the women that he abused, it runs into the hundreds of millions of dollars. But this is a man who did such harm, and even he is not being fully held to account. And I think that's what was so traumatizing to so many of the victims, to learn that he was just getting away with, hoarding his little cash to himself.
Right, absolutely. So Kathryn, can you talk a little bit about the financial impact that sexual abuse has, whether it's on individuals or on communities or on our country at large? I know there's a big price tag that comes along with that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
There's an enormous price tag over just the emotional abuse and the emotional distress. And, survivors suffer from depression, post-traumatic stress. They suffer from eating disorders, sleeping disorders, educational challenges, relationship challenges, suicidal ideations, and sadly, suicide. The list just goes on and on and on. I know that personally, especially as a child, I suffered from sleep disorders. I overexercised to get away from the abuse. But I think it is really important to pay attention to the cost of abuse to society at large. I think the figures, Marci will correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the figures for individuals is about $830,000 per victim. The data on the cost to society and the different sectors of society, whether it is the cost on the educational systems, the health systems, the social service systems, the penal systems, all of those systems in society and all of those sectors of society bear an enormous financial burden in responding to this, the effects of child sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I know Marci has talked about in her work, and that's really important, is changing statute of limitations will really shift the cost of the abuse away from the victim, away from the families of the victim, and shift it to the bad guys, or to the institutions that look the other way, the institutions that allowed it to fester and move sexual predators around. And that's such an important part about civil statute of limitation reform. That's really where we can make a lot of change and protect children.
Absolutely. Yeah, because every one of these abuse situations happen within a system that allows and perpetuates and protects abusers that are doing these things, kind of for the sake of the brand name or the, whatever the case can be. So, individual abusers, holding them accountable is very important, but also making sure that our society holds institutions responsible and accountable for the decisions and the choices that they make as well. Absolutely. We've got some great comments and things, so we'll get to those here in just a minute, but I want to talk a little bit more about the laws specifically here in Iowa. So we have this, I couldn't believe this actually when Janet told me this. It just boggles my mind that we have this loophole in Iowa, and I'm going to read off of what Janet sent me just so that I get this correct. We have a loophole that prevents families from seeking civil damages after just 5 years of leaving a school or ending therapy if the perpetrator was a school employee, a counselor, or a therapist. So why is there this weird carve out for this particular group of people, and why limit it to only 5 years? Janet, if you want to answer, or Marci, anybody, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say it's absolutely a horrible law that we have on the books, that these are grown-ups in children's lives who should be the held to a higher standard because they're grown-ups that children should be able to trust. And if you look at the number of even just people that hold licenses with the state that work for schools, more than 50 of them have lost their license or had it revoked because of child sex abuse just in the past few years alone. And so this is just a terrible law that we've got to fix. This should not be on our books. It's an embarrassment to our state. And I'm not sure if Marci could let us know what it looks like around the country. But to me, this is an issue about money and insurance, not about the safety of our children.
Absolutely. It is an issue in which the insurance industry has been on the wrong side of the issue. Insurance doesn't want to pay on these claims, and so they lobby against the victims in every state. And unfortunately, in Iowa, they've held sway. But things are changing. Around the country, we are now seeing, a dozen states that got rid of their statute of limitations on the civil side. We have almost 20 states that have revived expired statutes of limitations. We've had just an amazing amount of activity in the last 2 to 3 years. It really has taken off. And so when Senator Petersen reached out to us, I was assuming that Iowa would be one of those states that would be thinking, right, about, it's got fabulous educational institutions. It's got fabulous minds. And I thought, okay, we'll push this through. But when I went back and saw what the law in Iowa had been and how it was worse than Alabama at one point. It's now beat Alabama a little bit, but not by a lot. And I use Alabama and Mississippi and Michigan as examples of some of the worst states in the country. So there's a lot to be done here. But I think what the public needs to understand is this. You will not know about the risk to your kids in your state unless you let the victims go to court. Yeah. So as long as lawmakers keep them out of court, you're not going to know if your child's teacher or scoutmaster or priest or guy next door is dangerous. Mm-hmm. And it's all about parents, in my view.
Yeah. And they're also not going to know about what institutions are not doing the right thing. Yeah. And there are a lot of institutions that, have children come into every single day, whether it's education, athletics, whatever the institution is and whatever the service they provide to children. It's the only way, like Marci says, is to really hold them accountable and get them to have better practices that put kids first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amber, I would say that's been one of the most heart-wrenching things that's come before my office. It's just Iowan after Iowan who has tried to do the right thing because they're worried about other kids, and they've been shut. The doors to justice have been shut. And that they know that their perpetrator is living with another child, they're driving a school bus, they're in a school system, and they've been shut out of justice. And I don't think Iowa parents really realize just how bad our laws are and how dangerous they are for our communities and families.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I shared an article via email with you all. And it even featured a woman who was unable to get justice because of the statute of limitations in Iowa. And she was a woman who was sexually abused by a doctor in Harlan, Iowa, which was a story that was profiled in the Des Moines Register just a few years ago. A family doctor that was very trusted by members of the community who they believe it is possible that he sexually abused literally hundreds of children. And so he is now in prison for the rest of his life. So that's good. But, these people are still prevented from being able to get justice and recover that which can help them to recover. I think it's such a healing part of the process to know that the person who harmed you is, like you said, not out there harming others, and that people are made aware of what that individual has done.
Amber, if I could just jump in, the what we've learned over the last 3 to 4 years, because of windows that have opened in states like New York, earlier in Delaware, is that doctors can be the most prolific pedophiles in the United States. They have private access to children on the order of the thousands. And so we're increasingly hearing about doctors. There was one at Rockefeller University, for example, in New York. And there are estimates that he had 3,000 victims. And the reason is because, think about a doctor's schedule, how many children they see in a day, how often they might get access all by themselves, and how indefensible a child is. There's nothing a child can do in response to an authority figure like a doctor telling them to take off their pants or whatever. So parents need to be empowered. And I think they've been disempowered by our society. They've been told, drop your kid off at sports camp, drop your kid off at school, don't worry about it, everybody's okay. It's not true. Parents have the right to know, and they especially should have the right to know about the safety of their children at doctors. And they won't know about all of the doctors that are endangering children unless you give justice to the victims who could come forward now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think as a parent, and I listened to a really great podcast. It's been probably over a year ago now, and I can't tell you the name of it, unfortunately. If I find it, I'll drop it into the comments later. But it was a detailed story about how these young women helped to bring down Dr. Nassar. And the thing I think that really scared me the most as a parent, I have a 17-year-old boy, I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, but as a parent, so much of this happened while parents were in the room. And so if you could, for just for the parents that are watching today, talk a little bit about, aside from changing the law, which we need to do, and we're going to circle back and talk about that in just a minute, how can parents be more in tune to what's happening? How can we protect our kids?
Well, there are two answers to that. One is with respect to the Nassar scenario, there was a whole universe that failed these kids. Our Game Over Commission will be releasing its report on the Nassar scandal at the end of August, early September, detailing how from the FBI to MSU to doctors' organizations, all the way down the line, were covering for Nassar. And so I think that's kind of a special circumstance. We've got to empower every one of those organizations to do better, especially the FBI. But the second thing is parents need to actively, continually ask their kids, are you okay? Is there anything that's just not right? Did that really help? And they need to question treatment. They need to question the doctors. What is this treatment? Why is this supposed to work? Show me the data. Because if anybody had asked Nassar, show me the data on how your approach works, there wasn't any.
Right.
It was all in his head.
Yeah.
And they were just snowballed by him. So parents are going to have to step up, be more difficult. And kids don't like that, but honestly, kids don't understand the harm that's out there.
Yeah.
And if I could add to that, I think just speaking as a survivor and also speaking as a parent of 5, that empowering children with the right to say no, empowering children with accurate language around body parts, empowering children that they can say no to an authority, someone in a position of authority, they can say no to a family member, and empowering children to know that any secret is generally not a good secret. And if it doesn't feel right, it ain't.
Mm-hmm.
Just if we can allow parents to teach their kids that if it doesn't feel right, it is not right, and also to empower themselves if it doesn't feel right, it isn't. And as Marci said, pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Having those conversations with your kids. I mean, obviously when they're little, it's a lot harder and, you know, it has to be developmentally appropriate and that sort of thing. But, you know, yeah, I think keeping those lines of communication open with your kids and helping to teach them to trust that still small voice inside themselves, whether it is, you know, in a sexual abuse situation or if they're in danger or, you know, drinking and driving, whatever, you know, it's such a challenge as a parent to teach kids to listen to that gut instinct. Absolutely. So, all right. So let's talk some more about what we can do in Iowa. Janet, I'd love for you to talk about the bill that you proposed last session. What was it? What did it do, or what did it propose to do? And what happened with it?
Yeah. So I proposed a couple of bills. One would eliminate the criminal statute of limitations, and that one actually passed and got signed into law. The other bill would eliminate the civil statute of limitations, but beyond eliminating it, it would open a look back window for survivors who have already surpassed their statute of limitations to be able to seek damages from the organization that covered up the crime or the perpetrator. The bill passed, not the bill I sponsored, but similar language passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee with unanimous support. Mm-hmm. And then it sat and went nowhere. The majority leader made a decision not to run the bill. And so what Iowans could do is reach out to their lawmakers and reach out to the majority leader and let them know that they want this bill brought up for debate and they'd like for this to be signed into law. Until that point, we have survivors that are age 33 and over that have absolutely no means of justice. And that means we have known perpetrators living amongst us and potentially abusing other children. Mm-hmm. And the bill also would get rid of the ridiculous loophole that we talked about here in that 5-year window. It would hold them all to the same, getting rid of the statute of limitations.
Sure. So, and I think there might be a little bit of background noise. I don't know if that's, I don't know, it kind of sounds like a fan a little bit, and somebody commented on it. So, oh, there it goes. It's going away now. So, okay, explain this to me, because to me, the idea of protecting children is a slam dunk. Like, why would any legislator not want to advance or pass a bill that helps victims of or survivors of sexual assault? So this I always think of it in these terms, and I don't, just to kind of, is I've done a lot of work in gun violence prevention, and in gun violence prevention, we are always up against the gun lobby, right? So there's people that are pro gun, you know, on that side, and so we're always fighting against people that are trying to push further. There cannot be a pro child sex abuse lobby. Right? So like, wow. Where is the blockade? Why isn't this moving?
It's the same culprits all over the country. It's the insurance industry and the Catholic bishops. They lobby like this is their job, because it is. And it's really, many of the religious groups do not want any more of their secrets spilled. They've had enough of looking bad. And universities don't want to be held to account. Schools don't want to be held to account. No one wants to look like they're bad to children. Mm-hmm. So the reaction is, okay, well, then we'll just make sure that none of these victims can tell their stories. this is going to change. I have no doubt that Senator Petersen is going to be successful in getting this through, just as Arkansas and Louisiana and North Carolina and Arizona, states that I never would have put in the top 10, have in recent years, in large part due to the ambassador, Kathryn Robb. So I have no doubt that's going to change. But for the time being, lawmakers, unfortunately, are listening to the forces that keep these secrets, and they want to keep the secrets. And so it's a matter of leadership, and it's a matter of deciding that your children in your state are more important than the people who are giving money to your campaign or are regularly in your office. It's an either or. It's changing. It's getting better in almost every state, and I think in Iowa it will too.
Yeah, there really is such an enormous amount of momentum from the Me Too movement to, Larry Sandusky and, the Nassar situation, USA Gymnastics, Boy Scouts. I mean, the ball is just picking up momentum. And I think, legislators, if there's any legislators out there watching, besides Janet, if you're watching, get on the right side of history with this. I mean, like I said, this is a slam dunk as far as legislation goes, and should be really uncontroversial in so many ways. So let's talk a little bit about, and I posted about this, go Senator Petersen, that was one of the comments from him. Let's talk really briefly. I posted about this in the Facebook event yesterday. This Child Athletes Bill of Rights. So we are kind of beginning to realize that, in addition to religious institutions, colleges and universities, nonprofit organizations, that there's this real groundswell of people coming forward who've been sexually abused in, AAU sports or, traveling teams, that sort of thing. So talk to me a little bit about this Childhood Bill of Rights that ChildUSA is working on, and how we can support that.
So the Army of Survivors, which is a group started by Nassar survivors, and ChildUSA have partnered to put together essentially a foundation for safety for children in gyms, is really what it is. Because the largest extracurricular activity for children in the United States is sports. Millions of kids. And it's not just kids going to the Olympics. It's my kids playing soccer, right? So, sorry, kids. But so the issue here is, how do we do it? So the Army of Survivors had come up with this concept of SAFE, 4 principles, Bill of Rights. Let's post it in every gym. And just like Kathryn was saying, let's empower the kids. Let's let them know it's about them. But it's resting on a foundation of a project at ChildUSA that I am so excited about, which is that we've spent the last 3 years with talking to the experts, putting together the policies, doing the studies, and we've come up with what we call the gold standard. It is the set of principles every youth-serving organization needs to adopt. And we want to see it enforced by insurance. We want the insurance industry to say you can't get covered if you're not doing it. And if you are doing it, you get a discount. So there's actual enforcement. So the dream here is, practically speaking, we see every gym create a safe environment for kids. Kids are empowered, but my bottom line, parents are empowered. That's what we really want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Because why not prevent it?
Right. If we can, we've got the tools.
Yeah.
But what we saw in the UK is that they went through all of these, a lot of activity to figure out what are the best standards, and then they just sent them to all the organizations, and it didn't improve safety one iota. Right? I can send you this piece of paper right now, and it's not going to solve the problem. We've got to figure out an enforcement system to stop systemic violence. And that's really where our heart is, and that's what this whole project's about.
Yeah, and that conversation has to involve the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association and the NCAA and AAU and all of these organizations that are, kind of on the periphery of, as far as like AAP and American Medical Association, but as far, with the sports piece of it, but that, that the culture changes, I mean, that's, whether in places like this, whether it's sexual harassment in the workplace or sexual assault on college campuses, or it's about culture change. That's where people become empowered, is through the change in culture.
Amber, I coached basketball for over 30 years. Little kids, high school kids, AAU, you name it, I coached. I had to take the concussion online exam every single season, not year, every single season. And it was long, and I could, within a couple of years, I could teach it. And I kept thinking to myself, yeah, this is really important, but parents need to be empowered, and coaches should be forced to take this. Parents should be forced to take this. Parents need to be educated about what's appropriate within those athletic structures. And it was mandated by statute in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, where I used to live. And, we need that type of push. Of course, making sure our kids are safe from injuries and concussions and the like. But, it is such a dangerous world out there, sadly, for our kids. And we need to empower them, educate coaches, staff, and parents. And it should be laws that are mandated for people to be educated with the data that ChildUSA gathers daily.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. That's such a great common sense type of thing. And so much of that culture change comes around the issue of talking about things openly. I know like on college campuses, sexual assault was always kind of this whispered thing that people didn't talk about. But when they brought it out into the open, now I would say there's still a lot that can be done to address the issue of sexual assault on campus. We know that's true, but that began the process of culture change and, helping to prevent and also make sure that people who are affected can get justice. So I love that idea. That's fantastic. Can we add that to the to-do list, Janet? Oh, I love that. I'm going to take a peek here really quick. Kim said I had to get certified by Safe Sport just to be a parent in the hockey locker room. Yeah. And so, okay, Chris wants to know, do children, and I will add in families and parents, know where they can turn for help?
So that's one of the shocking things that we've learned. We did a study of elite athletes, and we asked them, one, have you been a victim of abuse? And, a large percentage answered yes. And then we asked them, did you know where to report it? 80% of elite athletes who've been in the game since they were young, very young, had no idea where to turn. So we then said, okay, well, then let's ask ourselves, where would we go to report a problem? It turns out if you are abused in a gym, there are usually 5 to 6 places you should report. You need to go to the authorities, you need to go to Child Protective Services, you need to go to Safe Sport, you need to go to the NGB. We've really got a lot of work to do in terms of streamlining reporting and educating our kids. There's this one place you go and you can make the report. And so that's a real sore spot. I think that we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I can imagine would be really overwhelming for, parents and kids as well, to just know where to start, who's actually going to listen to me, who's going to help. That's a really great question. I'm glad that Chris asked that. So as we're kind of coming toward the end here, kind of a wrap-up question for everybody. And Chris said these resources are so inaccessible for vulnerable youth, especially. Yeah. White upper middle class kids have a lot more opportunity to seek and find justice than kids that come from challenging socioeconomic backgrounds, kids of color, all of that sort of thing. I actually was reading not too long ago. I was getting really into crime podcasts, and it was a really great article about how so many of our crime podcasts focus on the abduction and murder of white women, but that there are so many more missing Black children and women that we don't talk about, that never get to be on, Serial or these other podcasts or TV shows and those sorts of things. So I think it's really important to, point out that those services are much harder to come by for kids from challenging backgrounds. So I would love to go around to each one of you as we kind of wrap up here, and we'll start with you, Janet. Tell me 3 things that I can do as a parent, as a voter, as a mom, to help change the conversation and change the laws in Iowa.
Yeah, well, first off, reach out to your lawmaker and ask them to support it, ask them to push to have the bill debated. Secondly, call the governor's office. Tell the governor that you want our laws changed to better protect our children. And third, try and engage your circles, your network of people that you know to get involved in the issue. I often think of how many lobbyists there are up at the State House. Many people work for organizations that are full-time lobbyists at the Capitol. And we have lobbyists that lobby for a lot of businesses that have a lot of lobbyists who children and families. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that says that they couldn't, but they were saying, this is important. This is important. We say for the state, we want it to be involved in state and youth organizations. That they get your name.
We're having just a little bit of trouble, I think, with your audio, Janet. So I'm thank you so much for that. I think to reiterate your point, get involved, talk to your legislator, call the governor's office, ask them to pass these laws to repeal the statute of limitations in Iowa for civil cases. Talk with your friends, discuss the realities of what we're facing here. Yeah, I know we're having some audio issues, guys. I think it's getting a little bit better. Hopefully you can all hear me. Comment if you can hear me okay. And go up to the State House and lobby, because there aren't that many organizations and groups that are lobbying on behalf of just children and kids. There's all other kinds of lobbying organizations up there, everything from motorcycle riders to hog farmers to anything and everything that you can think of. So we need more people out there speaking on behalf of kids. Absolutely. Kathryn, what would be some ways that you would recommend that we can make Iowa safer for kids?
Speak out, go to the press, vote. I'm going to give you 4, and visit ChildUSA on a regular basis, because the data and the research that they have there is just the best, and will really help you be educated and learn more about this tremendous epidemic that is facing Iowans and all citizens of this country.
Yeah. That kind of touched on something there that I wanted to mention actually earlier, but I'm going to just bring it up real quickly. There's so much misinformation about sexual abuse circulating on social media. Gosh, I think we could do a completely whole other live cast just about that topic. But I love that you mentioned going to ChildUSA and the research that you all do, peer-reviewed, investigative research that's available for people. So if you have questions, don't rely on memes. I know this is like, we beat this dead horse into the ground, but memes do not tell the whole picture of childhood sexual abuse in our state, in our country. So, please bookmark ChildUSA as a place where you can go and get factual information about childhood sexual abuse in this country, and what can be done about it and specific to your state, rather than relying on YouTube videos or other very problematic information that's out there. So, Marci, wrap it up for us. Tell us what we can do. And I know you probably could expound on that topic right there. I know we could completely do a whole nother show, but kind of wrap this up for us and let us know how we can get involved, how we can support the work of ChildUSA, and what we can do here in Iowa and across the U.S.
Awesome. Just thank you so much. And every person on this screen is a force of nature. So I just want to thank the senator. I want to thank Amber for having this conversation and all you've done. And of course, Kathryn, the ambassador. So here are the three things I suggest. Go to ChildUSA.org and sign up for our newsletter. We do a weekly update on the latest science news, what's going on in this arena. Go to the ChildUSA.org/law page, and you will find out more than you ever wanted to know about statutes of limitations. I've been studying them for 20 years. It's all dumped in there, and it's all good. And I have an amazing legal staff and an amazing social science staff, which just populate that with all that information. And last but not least, we are now looking for what we're calling ambassadors. And these are people to help us get the message out, because I really do believe in education. And so if you are interested in being an ambassador and helping us get the message out about SOL reform and about Senator Petersen leading the way in Iowa and what's going on in the other states, just email info@childusa.org, and we'll send you a packet. And we'd just love to have everybody involved.
That's so great. I love that. I know in my work with gun violence prevention, the story of survivors is what changes laws. It's what changes hearts. It's what changes minds. And so, yeah, I know that the process of coming forward and talking about what you've gone through is a very challenging situation. It's good to be part of a larger organization that can guide you, that can give you information. Sorry, my dog is barking at a rabbit right now. But it is really good. And also that survivor support as well, being part of a larger group that can help support you too. So, well, this has been just such a wonderful conversation. I feel like we could just sit and have coffee all afternoon and just talk about a lot of different things. It's been such a joy and a pleasure to talk about hope, ways that we can change what's happening in Iowa to give more survivors that opportunity to get the justice that they deserve. And so I appreciate you all coming on to have this really hard conversation, but very necessary conversation. And I just encourage everyone who's watching to please check out ChildUSA, follow them on social media, sign up for the newsletter, as Marci mentioned, get in contact with Janet Petersen, Senator Petersen, or your own legislator. Literally just go to the Google bar and type in "find my legislator" if you're not sure who your legislator is. And this right now we're talking about this on a state level issue. So find your state senator, your state representative, and reach out to them. Ask them if they'll support this bill, help bring it to the floor, get it up for a vote, because we can't wait. For survivors that are out there, we can't wait anymore. So,
Amber, if I could just add one small thing, is to any survivor out there listening or watching, just know you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, ladies. This video is going to be up on my Facebook page here in just a little bit. Please feel free to share it out. And I'm saying that to the folks that are watching as well. If you know somebody who is really passionate about this issue or concerned about this issue or affected by this issue, share this video with them. Encourage them to get in contact with ChildUSA, and let's move this ball forward and get this done. It's time. Great. Well, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to go ahead and first of all, dismiss my child's orthodontist appointment reminder. and go ahead. He's getting his braces off today. So it's only been a long 5 years. And then I'll end the broadcast, and then it'll go, the recording will go up on the Facebook page to be shared out. And have a great rest of your day, and stay in contact.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.